Welcome to the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
I'm Michelle Brigman.
And today it's the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast, and our special guest is us.
Yay, we like it.
Because we want to do a podcast on how to deal with any shitstorm you are facing in life. And that has been probably my most fulfilling journey of all, was learning how to deal with just about anything and coming out and living a really happy life. And I wanted to share some of those skills. I wrote a book on it, so let me give you the plug for Work-Life Reset.
It's so good.
And
I give that away. You know I give that away.
I know, you were my best customer. But it really was born out of my worst shitstorm. Michelle, you've had a few shitstorms. And
yeah, I've had a few. Like
but
most.
I had a mom that taught me, and she always, her mantra was face life, face life. And I always wondered, well, what do you know about that? Because you have this pretty comfortable suburban existence. How hard is your life? And then it got really hard, because when she was 66, she had a stroke. It paralyzed her. 10 years in, her memory started going, and then it was full-blown Alzheimer's for another 10 years. So she was sick for 20 years. And I have to tell you all, I never heard her complain once. And I don't know if this doesn't count as a complaint, because when she was sick and she was in the nursing home, she told me that she had a sore on her bottom. So she was just telling me something. It's the only time I ever heard her say anything about pain or anything. And it was because she made up her mind that no matter what happened, and it was always a roller coaster, but no matter what happened, she was going to deal with it. So I have some resilience skills. How about you, Michelle? You've had so many challenges in your life. How did you get to be strong?
I think, well, my mom was...
Other than reading my book.
Yes, other than reading your book. No, my mom, I think there was always something that was said growing up, and that was, well, you just got to get up and keep moving forward. And that always stuck with me. And let me caveat this to say, I have had to sort of unpack some issues of just sort of denial and not confronting, like not sort of sinking into the difficult time as well as I probably needed to, and then having to go back later and revisit it. So pushing it aside and ignoring it is certainly not what I'm suggesting here. However, kind of to the point you said, is deciding that this is what it is. How do you take a deep breath and continue to move forward? But that idea of what else are you going to do? Like, what else is there? I'm not giving up. So you just keep going. And that has played over and over and over to me my entire life.
So I like what you're saying, because sometimes I'll just say, I think I'm going to pull a Scarlett O'Hara on this one. Now, for those of you younger ones who haven't seen this classic movie, which is very, very incorrect politically now, okay?
But it's still great.
But there's this moment where, all hope is lost. And Scarlett O'Hara, so she got two things, but the one she's always say, I'll worry about it tomorrow. So I'll frequently say, I'll worry about it tomorrow, because sometimes tomorrow comes and it's not that big of a deal. And that gives perspective. I did learn something huge when my mom started to get Alzheimer's, because anybody who's gone through that, it can sound like the saddest, hardest, bleakest experience of your life. And it was challenging. But I learned that the faster I did three things, the faster I could get on with living a happy life. And those three things were accept, cope, adapt. So when she started repeating herself 100 times, I just listened to the sound of her voice, because I knew the day was going to come when I wouldn't hear it that much, and that day would come when I wouldn't hear it at all. So I just would let her repeat herself and tell the same story over and over again. And then she got, so she didn't talk so much. And, the last thing she could say was, I love you, which was plenty and it was enough. And so every time there was a change, I had gratitude for what I had, because even when she couldn't talk, at least she could move around. And then when she couldn't move around anymore, I'd walk into her room and she'd just be laying there. And there was this whoosh of love, maybe not from her, but maybe from me to her. And I had gratitude for that. And so for all those 20 years, I had the most intensely intimate relationship with my parent that I can't even imagine being closer to my mother. And sometimes I'd see women out for lunch with their moms, and I'd think, oh, wouldn't that be great if I could go out with my mom? But I knew I had something bigger. And the point of the story is, accept, cope, adapt. Those three things, go through that sequence. But the other thing is to find gratitude everywhere you can, because even in hard times, there are things you can be grateful for, and that will carry you through.
That is so beautiful. And the other thing that stands out to me, Fawn, is, it is honestly in suffering that we, as just humans, learn to slow down, be still, and be in the moment, be present in the moment, and appreciate what's happening. And I think just even you describing when you'd walk into the room with your mom, right? You could just feel that energy. You sat there, you appreciated it. And I think that is the reminder that so often we are thinking about tomorrow. What if,
right?
What happened? Why not? That we forget to be still and just sit with the way things are. So back to your accept, right? And cope, just being still and listening and honoring that. And it can bring you so much peace, especially whenever you feel like the world is swirling out of control.
And you and I are both really big on mindfulness. And mindfulness, I don't think that's the best name for what it is. I always call it go Zen, because it's just, you want to be right here, right now. And some people have great difficulty with that. Yes. I had a friend whose therapist said, how much time do you spend in the present moment? And she says, none. And she goes, well, I want you to start spending 10 minutes in the present moment. And so she's telling me about that. And I said, you are not in the moment 10 minutes a day? And she said, no. And I said, well, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm always thinking about something else. I said, even when you're having sex? And she goes, yeah, when I'm having sex, I'm thinking about having it with somebody else. And I said, well, that would be the 10 moments I would start with, right? But
those are ones you want to be present for.
Right. But, mindfulness is really hard for some people. And I always say you can make it really easy by just go look at a tree, okay? And pick a leaf and just watch that leaf. And then tell yourself that leaf is moving up. That leaf is swaying in the wind. Nobody else will ever know this leaf even existed. But by slowing down enough to see that, it will still you enough to calm down. Because I think half of the anxiety that exists in our lives is brought on by our unwillingness to just let it go.
Oh, 100%. You describe an activity called grounding, right? Going outside.
It's called grounding?
Off your shoes. It actually has a name, like grounding, where you can go outside, take off your shoes. I know when I love being outside. I know you start your day every day outside. And just even the act of, you talked about looking at the tree, go so far, and this is going to sound weird, but trust me on this. Go outside and find a tree and actually put your hands on it.
Oh, no, I do that.
Yeah, feel it.
I've hugged a tree before.
Yes.
People, I always look around and make sure nobody can see me because you look like you're crazy, but there is energy there.
100%. And that's what I was going to say. And it's funny because you can if you sit there and be still just for a little bit, hold on to that tree, breathe it in, you get in tune with the vibration coming from it, and you actually can feel it, and it will slow your heart rate. It will slow your breathing. And it is a great moment for you to the point you're making, right? Again, is just then an awareness of what are the smells? What are the things I see? Watching that leaf that is fluttering in the wind that you don't notice. It's happening all around you all the time. But using your friend's example, right? You're so tuned out. She's so tuned out that she can't even notice the miracles and the beauty and the things to be appreciative and grateful of that are right in front of her. And yes, that is the problem with what so many women, especially women in business who are trying to juggle family and work and, career and personal things. They're exhausted with the to-do list. And so the reminder of taking those few minutes, I think.
But I didn't want to misadvertise this to the people, because we were talking about shitstorms, and shitstorms, there are shitstorms and then there are shitstorms. And the worst shitstorm of my life came in 2013. I bought a house that was move-in ready, but it had just a fortune in hidden problems. 2 days later, my mom died. After all 20 years of that, she suddenly died. And then 2 months later, my dad died. I had a breakup of a 7-year relationship, and I had a friend betray me in a business sense. And I had one of my closest friends just vanish from my life. It was the worst year ever. Now, when my mom died, I had a speech in Dallas the next day for Deloitte. And it hadn't hit me. And boy, I hit that one way out of the park. I just, as a tribute to my mom, I did this speech. And so much that they wanted me to come back the very next year to their event at the same hotel with the same people. And that's a year into the grief, of having lost everybody and all of the other stuff I described. And I'm in that place. And I was talking on the phone to my friend Kim File about how here I am in the same hotel where I was a year ago. And I was depressed. And I knew I had to do something at this point. Either I needed to get an antidepressant, and there's no crime in that, okay? But I either needed to do that or I needed to do something. Because Kim said, you've got to get a handle on this. And that was 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, and I flew that day back to Florida. And the next day, I started something which famously has become my reset walk. I live in Pinellas County, Florida, which stretches from St. Petersburg all the way up to Tarpon Springs. So that's St. Pete, Clearwater, just amazing beaches. And the day after I got back, I started at sunrise walking our beaches. And I don't think anybody had done this in modern times, because logistically there's so much traffic in our county and it's hard to pull it off. But I would start at the south end, and I would put my bike 8, 10, 13 miles away, and I would walk to my bike and then bike to my car and then go home, sleep in my bed, and the next day get up and then do the next stretch until I had done, I think it was 59 miles, including all of our barrier islands here. So I walked every inch of beach in my county. And something happened along the way, because you can tell from this video, and you can look this up on YouTube. I think it's like Fawn Germer reset, and look for beautiful beach video. And by the 4th day, I was waking up saying, where am I going today? And by the time I was done 2 weeks later, and it took 2 weeks because logistically those barrier islands were really hard to pull off. They needed boat access in many cases to get to them. And by the time I was done, I was myself again, like cured. And I remember thinking, wonder how long this will last. And it lasted. Mm-hmm. And that's when I studied our ability to reset ourselves. And what I did was I went to my go-to thing, which is wide open space, fresh air, prayer, because I could pray, just disengaging, seeing nature, and then exercise. You've heard it before. Every study shows that exercise and mood are so connected. And by doing all of this for such an extended period, it cured me. Now, you do not have to come to Pinellas County to walk to the beaches to cure yourself. If you are a beach walker, that may be your go-to coping strategy, right? But if you're not, figure out what it is that really trips your breakers. Is it knitting?
Art?
Right. It could be gardening and reading. But I wrote this book about how to disengage and make time to completely reset yourself. And that means you have to ground yourself in the moment and have a deliberate effort to say, enough of that. This is a new day. And, I cannot tell you what that hard year was like for me as a motivational speaker, because you can imagine that I make my living standing in front of people, making them happy and making them feel good and hopeful. And on the inside, I was crumbling. And one of the things I've always told people is you never know how close you are to turning the corner until you turn the corner. So all you can do is just keep moving forward one step at a time. And that beach walk for me was that metaphor coming to life, because I have really bad feet and my feet would hurt when I was walking all those miles. So I would just tell myself, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, because even if I was in pain, if I did that sooner or later, I would get where I needed to go. And that was the metaphor for what was going on. And in that tough year, I kept waiting for the shitstorm to end. I waited to turn the corner. And then I realized sometimes you have to actively do something to make yourself strong enough and resilient enough to get through it. And so that for me was what I did. I made that reset, took those steps one after another. And when I got to the end of my beach walk, I dropped to my knees because I had to get a picture of me writing something profound in the sand. But anybody who knows me knows that I can't stand fake stuff, and it couldn't be trite. So I dropped to my knees and I wrote the word done. And it was that I was done with the pain. I mean, I still feel grief. That was 2013. I still do. I mean, it's not like that pain is gone, but I was done with living in pain. I was done with the hopelessness. I was done with the darkness. And then I realized you never know how close you are to turning the corner until you turn the corner. And when I wrote that word, I had turned the corner. So if you're having a hard time and you're not getting through it, you have skills within you that can get you through it. But it's going to happen one step at a time, and you have to make up your mind.
That's such a critical point, because there's the people who are out there and they hate where they are right now, but they're thinking about, let's just use your example of the walk or painting. Like, I don't want to do that. But you have to really ask yourself, is where I'm at and how I'm feeling right now better? You already know how sucky it is because it hurts, it's painful. You don't want to live in that misery. So you have to sort of get yourself up and out to take the steps to move forward. And I know, while not a major trauma in my life, just whenever I was even facing burnout, I was just frustrated with my job, and it was affecting everything in my life, my relationship, my family, just all of it. And I was getting inside of my own head, right? And getting in my own way in terms of getting out of it. And I was seeking help elsewhere. I was seeking help from the doctor. I was seeking help from counseling, and it wasn't getting me further. And I realized that, you know what? This is about me going inside. So I went on my own journey, right, to figure out what is it that I am doing that is contributing to the way that I feel. Doesn't mean I can change the situation that I'm in, but it does mean I can take control of how I'm reacting to it. So while I didn't have the words of accept, cope, adapt, I knew that it was in me. So I treated myself as a project, and I went on my whole journey of exploration around health and wellness, what made me feel good, what made me not. And it led me down a whole new path. Now, I couldn't see that in the beginning. I couldn't see the light at the end of it, But I knew, and again, mama's words coming back of, well, what else are you going to do? You got to put one step in front of the other and trust that the light is ahead. You are walking toward the light and away from the dark.
Yeah, you have to believe that even when it seems so hopeless. And somebody once introduced me and they said she's the embodiment of the proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And I'd never heard it. And I like that she said that about me. But that's what we need for ourselves, is to always know, no matter what happens, we're tough enough to stand up and fight again and to keep going. And I want us to give some of our thoughts. I was thinking we could split this up of coping skills during a crisis, and then the other thing is coping with a job you hate, because those are different skills for doing it. And you have to be in the right place to take a first step, but a first step doesn't mean a giant leap. And
No.
I'm always so touched by that podcast we did with Catherine Switzer, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, because I had asked her, well, how do you advise a woman who needs to lose 100 pounds how to do that? And she says, well, just put on your shoes. And really, if you're in a depression, that's what you need to do, is put on your shoes, walk to the end of the block, and just get started. Take the first step, whether that's a metaphorical step, like you want to, do something for yourself, or you actually want to go for a walk. And sometimes before you get that, you have to give yourself permission to cry. Many times when we are tied up in our own heads and having real adversity, we're unable to cry. So I learned, if I can't cry, I just get a really sad movie, and I'll just put on old Terms of Endearment and
oh gosh,
let her rip. It's like, just have a good cry. And then for me, I'm going to say, I do this. I am not in any way telling you how to live your life or what to believe, people. That's up to you. Okay. I'm just saying that for me, the power of prayer is huge. I don't feel like I'm alone. I will never tell you what faith you should have or how you should pray. I hope you do have something. I know statistically we're seeing that fewer and fewer people are believing in anything anymore. So I don't want to offend anybody. But I just want to say that for me, I don't feel alone. It makes me feel like I have a place to go and like I'm taking some action. And Michelle, I know that's important to you too.
Oh, very important. I might have a very, very strong faith, because I know what that faith has helped guide me through, especially in the dark times, but also in the good times. I mean, even in my marriage, my second marriage, one of the verses that we read was the 23rd Psalm, which is the, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which here everybody says at a funeral. But for me, it's a hopeful scripture. And I wanted it in my marriage vows, because I knew that there would be dark, difficult times, and that no matter what happened, I was never alone. And so that's a very, very powerful, but yeah, I've seen the power of it to work in my life.
And you look at people who've gone through one thing after another, and they don't lose that faith because it serves something. So I don't want to go too far down that, because it's some people can't stand that. But I do want to make it really clear that that is one of my primary coping skills. Yeah. And then gratitude. There is a painting I bought many years ago for $25 in an antique store. And so it has bright colors, and it just says, I am grateful. And then underneath it, it says, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning. I have that placed so that I feel gratitude the minute I wake up. And when you are grateful for what you have, instead of what you've lost or what you're losing, you still have so much. And when you can't see it or feel it, just start writing it down. I've done that with so many people. I said, okay, let's come up with a gratitude list. And well, I mean, I've got a gratitude list in my phone so that I can just every day know that it's a good day, because no matter what, as a base, look what I have that and I get done with my prayers, and then I just go through my gratitude list. God, health, Sonny, my dog, friends and family. I'll never be homeless or hungry. I have a tribe, my home, and this just goes on and on and on. To things like I'm Betty Germer's daughter, because my mom made me strong, and I'm Fred's daughter too, because he made me outgoing, and I'm loved, and just the things I have that I'm so grateful for. And when I look at this list, I guess somebody might say, "Oh, that's a dumb list. Why are you thanking God for sea turtles?" Because I love them. And when I look at the things in my life, from people to my home to sea turtles, I realize I'm really rich. And this has nothing to do with money. So gratitude really is a very grounding thing.
Well, whenever you talk about that, one of the things, just truly the whole science of visualization and manifestation, talk about the fact that whenever you are tuned in and you're starting the day to notice those things in your life, that's what you notice in your life. Like those moments are going to come out and you're going to appreciate them. If you wake up and you're like, my life is awful, things are terrible, what's happening, you're seeing those are the things that stand out to you. And it's kind of funny. I'll do a little experiment with you right here and with our listeners. Like if I asked you right now in the room that you're in, pick out everything blue. Oh, just notice everything blue.
I know that old trick. But then you're going to say me, what's red?
No. There's no trick. No, but look at everything blue. My point is you're in and out of that room probably 1,000 times a day, and you don't notice the blue things until I asked you to notice the blue things. So it's about raising your consciousness of what's around you to notice the things that you want to stand out and value and have gratitude towards.
Oh, but there's a part 2 to that exercise too, which is okay, I want you to look at everything blue in this room. And then when everybody's done that, you say, okay, now tell me what's red. Because the other thing is we're missing so much. Yeah. So
well, I wanted to share a couple of the things that I do to cope.
Yeah.
And share some of yours. So people would tell you that if the building is on fire, I'm probably the person you want, because I tend to be a very calm reactor. Like I am good in crisis. But I think part of what it is when something happens, when there is a significant trauma or crisis, my first reaction is just I almost freeze for a second. It's a pause and a breath to just assess what is happening, just what's happening before I just react. And you've witnessed that for me.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I have to learn that too, because I'm more reactive and you are the steady one.
You're reactive, and I'm like, okay, wait a second.
We know it's
you get there, but it's just a different starting point. So I think it's good that we're giving our advice, because there's different personalities out there. So just that taking a breath and pausing and just noticing like what is actually happening, not what am I assuming is happening. What do I read 3 steps ahead that's happening? Like what is actually happening right now? And then asking myself, how do I want to respond to this? Like, what is it that I want to do in this situation? Because then I'm putting myself, okay, I'm coming on the other side of it a little bit. And how does this want to look based on what I know? And then I ask, okay, now how then do I want to, then what are the steps I'm taking? What are the behaviors right now? And this is like micro decision that's happening, but maybe that's being raised in an alcoholic family. Maybe that's being raised in kind of a environment of lots of instability. I didn't have room to react and just respond. That wasn't available or an option for me. So my coping skill is stop, assess, and now figure out what is the best path forward. And some of it's probably for my own safety and stability. But those are some of the things that I do. And I want to mention a real quick.
I got to tell you that you get 4 stars on that one, because I've seen you do that. I'm, you know, I am very emotive, and when I react to something, you can feel a physical change. Like I have to take action right now, and so I got to learn that from you. That's really good.
That's how we balance each other.
That's right.
I was going to share though a story. I remember I was in the Denver airport, and I'd gone through my first divorce, and things were, without getting into that whole story, things were awful. Like it was probably one of the lowest parts of my life, which you know. And I remember I just was feeling really like lost, what was going to happen next, just struggling. And I remember walking into this gallery, and it was a Thomas Mangelson gallery, who is a nature photographer. And there was this picture that was there, and it's called Born of the North Wind. And it's this super bleak, desolate picture. I'm standing there looking at it, and there's this polar bear that you see in the distance walking across this, totally frozen ice. And then if you look off in the distance, you see a little white fox that's also walking in the same direction. So they're together, but not together. And I remember the gentleman working in the gallery, he's like, "Oh, I see you noticing this picture. What are you thinking?" And he goes, "What do you think when you see it?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, it gives me so much hope." And he stopped, and he's like, "No one's ever said that about this photo before." And I'm like, "Look at it. It is, desolate. It's awful. It's cold. You can't even imagine this extreme." But I said, "Look, they're walking toward, the sun's coming up way off in the distance, and you just barely see the light coming up from the horizon, and they're walking toward it." And I go, "And the other fact is they're not alone. They're together. They don't know they're together, but there's always somebody beside you on the journey." Well, of course, I had to buy this picture because it was just like, it hit me at such an emotional level, and it was just absolutely beautiful. So it was Thomas Mangelson, Born of the North Wind. And that's one of those game changers for me.
That is cool. I bet that was a learning experience for that art guy too, huh?
Probably, because he was a little bit shocked. But yeah. I just, I think the biggest thing that you and I are talking about is finding the strength. If you don't have it on your own, surrounding yourself with people who can help you get the strength to take those first mini steps.
Well, and asking them for exactly what you need. That's hard for some people to say, "I need help." And specifically saying, even if it's something like, "I need you to go for a walk with me." Because you have to be able to say, "I need help." And sometimes asking for help makes the other person feel good. You're doing them a favor by asking. So you want to ask for help. And another thing is I touched on that a little bit. The power of exercise is what that does for your hormones and for your energy level, and the way that your perspective shifts is so huge. So when things get bad, start moving. And if you don't feel like running on a treadmill, take out the vacuum or start dancing or do something, anything to move. Somebody told me that when I was way young. She said whenever she gets mad, she starts dancing. And I think that's a great coping skill, because not only is it movement, but it's going to get your heart rate up and help you to feel a little better. And it's a start. It's a start. Michelle, are you as big on affirmations as I am?
I say an affirmation every morning. Would you like for me to share it with you? Because you have yours too.
Oh, I have lots of them. What's yours?
Every morning I say, "Today is a beautiful day, full of possibilities. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I open myself up to the positive energy of the universe, and I trust at how my life is unfolding." Every morning, those words come out of my mouth.
That's how many affirmations are in that, though? Say it again.
4.
Is that okay? See, and for those who don't do this, affirmations are always said in the positive, because your brain's like a hard drive. So you can rewrite the negative messages that are on there already, but it only works with constant repetition. So 2 things, you have to be in the mood to receive the message. And when my mom died, I wrote all these affirmations so I could skip the grieving process, and that didn't work because I wasn't in the mood to receive it. But studies have shown if you say, I'm getting thinner every day, I'm always eating the right food, I eat slowly and enjoy my food, I can always eat more later. If you just say these things and don't consciously change your eating habits, you will start to lose weight because your brain believes it and then acts accordingly. So I've had to use affirmations for dealing with family issues, or I remember I had a breakup when I was way younger, and I said this was going to happen sooner or later. I'm glad it's sooner. The fact that this happens now has saved me so much trouble. I am glad that I'm feeling stronger every single day. I am healing quickly. And I would just repeat. And that's how it works. So if you say your affirmations 50 times a day for 2 weeks, okay, that's it, 50 times a day for 2 weeks, that will take you 5 minutes a day, literally, to say 10 affirmations. But 50 times for 2 weeks, 25 times a day for 2 more weeks, 10 times a day, 2 more weeks. And then as needed, because the negative you've put in your head will start to creep back in if you don't keep reinforcing it. But you can pretty much rewrite anything. And I write about this in my books. There are other books too, what to say when you talk to yourself. And you can even Google how to write affirmations. But affirmations can change everything.
Yes.
So quickly. It's as strong as hypnosis and a heck of a lot easier. And so I'm a huge fan of that. That's an intervention. And the other thing is, be in touch with yourself enough to allow yourself to journal. Because journaling to me is like a free therapist. You kind of know in your head what a therapist would ask you, right?
Well, the therapist doesn't give you the answer. The therapist asks the question. So I think.
Well, I always liked if I had a therapist who would say the answer. That was always my favorite. But yeah, ideally, you're supposed to come to it yourself. And if you use journaling, you can ask yourself a question, start writing the answers. You have a place to go, gives you a place to process. And I always found that very, very healing.
Well, you use a lot of the voice to text too, where you'll just say it into your phone to write it. So it's not like you have to always grab the pen and paper whenever those moments hit you when you're on the go. Your phone's a powerful tool.
Oh, it is a very powerful tool for me. But I also love the process of writing, which a lot of people aren't into that. But your journal is your free therapist, and it's always there for you. And it's really insightful when, like 10 years later, you look back at it and you're like, gosh, I was worried about that. Like, why was I thinking about that? And you realize how much of your worry was really not necessary because everything worked out. And I'll give you that idea. And then I want to wrap this because we've gone long and we have more. So we're going to split this into a part 2, and that will include the rest of the coping skills and dealing with your shitstorm at work. And the last thing I want to say before we split on this is that you have to maintain perspective, because as human beings, we have this unbelievable ability to slip into what's known as catastrophic thinking. And that's where in your head, something is 10 times bigger than it really is. So you have to be in charge of that and say, like Michelle did, well, what's really going on here? What's the action step? Instead of everything being a catastrophe. And really, when you look back on your life, there were catastrophes. We all have them. But not everything is a catastrophe. And you have to have faith that no matter what's happening, you've got it in you to cope with anything. And that's why we're here for you on Hard-Won Wisdom today, because we want to tell you there's a way out of any shitstorm.
Yes.
Maybe not as quickly as you want it to end, but you'll find your way. So we want to thank you for being with us today. And part 2 will be coming next week.
Fantastic. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.